The game was live, of course, on Virgin Media Sport last night. Graeme Souness was in studio on analysis, and here he is speaking about Liverpool's midfield and that scoreless draw.
Liverpool tried to put him under pressure, and what Bayern were doing were just turning out and going back to the goalkeeper. Neuer's good with his feet, and he was picking passes. We were like, our heads in our hands at times. Wow, why are you doing that? But apart from early on, when Mane nearly got a head on a square pass from Neuer, he didn't give it away. He was very, very good, and that's a great sort of get out ball if you're under pressure. If your goalkeeper's that get out of jail ball, if your goalkeeper's that good on the ball. But I'd come back to Liverpool. I'm disappointed in Liverpool's midfield. Don't take my word for it. When you think at the start of the season, he's got Keita coming in, he's tried to get Fekir, and he's signed Fabinho. That tells him he's not entirely happy. He saw that as a priority, and I think you saw that at the highest level. In the Premier League, they get away with steamrolling teams, the midfield. But when a little bit of class, a little bit of cuteness is necessary, Liverpool don't have that in midfield.
And did you see signs of frustration from him? As you say, we don't know what the little exchange at the end was there. But will Klopp be frustrated after the way that game panned out in general?
Yeah,
I think like every Liverpool supporter, you're hoping they're going to go to Munich with some sort of advantage. It's not the end of the world because Van Dijk will be back. They could go there and nick it. But he knows that in Munich, you're going to go there, not have a lot of the ball, be on the back foot, and you have to hope you're going to be lucky and you're going to defend well and nick something. Liverpool are not going to go there and boss the game. You know, Munich is a hard place to go and get a result.
Graeme Souness there speaking on Virgin Media Sport last night. Kenny, do you agree with that? That he was a little bit disappointed with Liverpool's midfield? Were you disappointed with Liverpool's midfield last night?
Yeah, I take his point in terms of, you could tell, but how he looked to invest in the summer. Klopp, the players he looked to bring in. Keita obviously was signed priest, but he came in the summer. Fabinho obviously couldn't play Fabinho on that central midfield position. I think Fabinho's introduction this summer for me gave Liverpool another tactical option in midfield. Predominantly up until the summer, they've played with a holding midfielder, Henderson, and two in front. Wijnaldum, Milner, Oxlade-Chamberlain when he came to the club. So you play with three orthodox central midfielders. Fabinho coming to the club, and even Keita to a point, but more so Fabinho, gave Klopp the option of when the bigger games for me came around the season, and no bigger than Bayern Munich away coming up in a couple of weeks. It gave him the option to go to an orthodox two in midfield, like Henderson and Fabinho, a real defensive shield as a pair in midfield to give real screen and protection to the back four. So you got your defensive four and a really solid defensively minded midfield too. So when you do that, you play with a number 10 rather than playing with three orthodox midfielders. You play with a midfield two, and you actually then play with a 10, a bit like Bayern did last night. Thiago and Martinez really played as a two in there, and James played as the number 10. So when Souness talks about a lack of a creative edge, for me that's the flip which Liverpool need at times, to go with a midfield two and really lock down that central area of the pitch. But what that does, it gives you the opportunity to introduce a 10. Now you've got to make a decision.
That's Shaqiri then.
Exactly. So he's talking about didn't get Fekir in, but for me they have that player there already in terms of Fekir. You could argue maybe Firmino dropping into that number 10 and Origi maybe up front.
They put Salah in there earlier in the season.
Exactly, and Shaqiri coming onto the flanks. So that's the kind of flip which maybe Klopp may be looking at. I don't think he'll go there. Potentially for the second leg, particularly if Van Dijk comes in. I think Fabinho going to the centre of the pitch, but I don't think he'll play as a two necessarily with Henderson. But I'd like to see that a little bit more, because that for me, you're always a little bit more secure defensively with that orthodox midfield two, playing 10-15 yards apart, squared of each other in centre midfield, and just really sitting behind the ball with your defenders, and allowing that front three and that little number 10, that little bit more of a creative spark in that area of the pitch, who you can get the ball to, who can get himself in the half turn and give him that little bit of magic, which you don't get from that orthodox midfield three. You don't necessarily get from Wijnaldum, Keita, a little bit more clunky, very good players, but orthodox central midfield players, as opposed to that kind of specialised number 10, which I think Graeme Souness is alluding to there. So it'll be interesting to see if he does look at that kind of flip, Klopp. But my gut feeling tells me he won't. He kind of trusts that orthodox kind of 4-3-3 in there, and just that front three which has served them so well.
Yeah, just a reminder as well that Graeme Souness clip came from Virgin Media Sport last night, which is the home of European football in Ireland, with more than 400 UEFA Champions League, Europa League and the Nations League games live this season. Virgin Media Sport is exclusive to all Virgin Media TV customers, who can also download the TV Anywhere app and stream all the action whenever and wherever they like. It's interesting we speak about this because, like, just looking at some of the player ratings this morning, at the Times, for example, they gave Jordan Henderson a 9, and Naby Keita, I thought, actually wasn't that bad last night. I see, like, whenever you go on Twitter, you can see players like that getting criticised left, right and centre. I'm just, when Souness was talking about midfield failings or disappointment in the midfield last night, I was a bit surprised. But from what you're saying, it's not really a kind of a systems failure in terms of their individual performances. It's more what they actually carry out and the role of those particular midfielders in a game like last night.
Yeah, but I think it's their individual qualities as well. I don't think you can say to Keita, criticise Keita and Wijnaldum for maybe not getting on the ball in advanced central areas, in tight areas of the pitch under pressure from players, and not getting on the half turn, manipulating the ball in tight situations, dropping their shoulder and going past one or two players. They're not that type of players. Keita is more of a box-to-box, high energy, good technical ability, don't get me wrong. Wijnaldum for me is a player who's at his best actually arriving late into the box, as those kind of third man runs, arriving, he's a good header of the ball, so actually coming onto the ball as receiving the ball on the half turn with players around them. That's a kind of very specialised position, that kind of number 10 position which we talk about. So I think they reasonably decent games last night. The work rate was good. I think they kept a reasonable defensive shape. I thought Bayern Munich played a better football in that central area of the pitch. Thiago, James to a point. I thought they worked the ball, kept control of the ball a lot better. But that wouldn't be unusual for Liverpool in terms of necessarily not dominating the ball and dominating possession on that central area. It's not really Liverpool's DNA. Liverpool, by and large, a little bit more direct in terms of getting the ball back to front. If they can go long early, they will, particularly into the space in behind defenders. If you remember, Henderson played a brilliant ball first half. They're struggling to get on the ball and make a few passes in his own half, hit a diagonal over the head of Sula. That diagonal run from Salah off the right wing in between full-back and centre-half almost got in. He got a shot on target off the outside of his left foot. So Liverpool aren't overly obsessed in terms of dominating possession stats, passes completed. If they can get the ball back to front early, they'll do that, and they've had a lot of success doing that. So you're right, wouldn't be overly critical of Keita. I didn't think Keita and Wijnaldum necessarily below par. But there is kind of limits when you put those type of players on the pitch. There is certain limits in terms of what they can do. I don't think you can be overly critical in terms of, well, they didn't thread the ball through the eye of a needle. They should have beaten those two players on the edge of the box. Shaqiri's that type of player, can drive you mad a little bit, but occasionally get on the ball. He'll give some of the eyes a little reverse pass in behind and open up a defence. He's that type of player, and that's the decision which Klopp will have going into the second leg, whether he trusts Shaqiri in that area of the pitch. Now you might say, well, that's an obvious. He's got to play him. Why wouldn't he play him? But our possession of football, would you trust Shaqiri? Would he show that same amount of defensive discipline and nous in a defensive area of the pitch as those other three players? No. So that's the kind of the trade-off, and they're the decisions Klopp will have to make, particularly in the key area of the pitch in central midfield. And likewise, Bayern, for fear of talking it to death, Martinez came in last night at the expense of Goretzka, probably a better footballer. Now he'll have a decision to make in terms of, does he get a bit more creative edge into his team, maybe sacrifice Martinez, again more defensive minded, and introduce Goretzka into that central midfield alongside Thiago, gives them more of a creative edge in that central area of the pitch, carries more of a threat for them going forward. But at the same time, that Liverpool front three might be licking their lips a little bit, because that defensive shield with Martinez in there won't be there for the second leg. So both managers, for me, have decisions to make in that central area of the pitch in terms of personnel. Yeah, is there a chance that we completely underrated this Bayern Munich team, that some of the talk around it was that they're not as good as they have been? And you speak about that midfield trio, and they sometimes can be a little bit unheralded despite the amount of trophies that they've got across that midfield trio. But at the same time, like, there was no surprise really when you saw them play so well in that area of the pitch. That's, like, I'm not sure where this Bayern Munich team is at, but it's certainly a lot harder than I think some people were saying. Yeah, but I would agree in terms of not as good as previous Bayern Munich. Now, when you think it's some of the really top class Bayern Munich teams, Ribery and Robben at their very best, Alonso in that centre of the pitch, Thomas Muller when he was playing at his very best, his real drop off in his performances the last kind of 12 months. So no, they're not at that particular level, but they're a decent side. I mean, Coleman and Gnabry, for me, the two before the game last night, I thought it could be a real threat, these two. Gnabry not surprised me, but thought he was the better of the two. So he was very efficient in possession of the ball, good decision making, played very well in 1v1 situations. He left Robinson for dead first half. close to the end line and created a chance for Lewandowski. So Gnabry in particular impressed me. Hummels as well at the back, aging as he is, not the most mobile, a little bit slow on the tongue, but defended his box superbly well. Great anticipation, sensed danger, made good decisions, nice and calm in his defending when they needed him. I like the fullbacks. The fullbacks are as good as anything, really, Kimmich and Alaba. So, yeah, maybe people...
They're careful not to push forward too much as well, which is kind of essential at this point playing Liverpool.
Yeah, exactly. I like to see that that's for me where Liverpool need to do a little bit. I know talk after the game, Robertson and Alexander-Arnold not as efficient going forward as they had been previously. But when you got someone like Gnabry and Coman in particular, absolutely dynamite in terms of speed, you've got to modify your approach a little bit, especially with an untried partnership at centre half. You've got to pull your full backs, one goes, you've got to pull someone a little bit closer to you. You've really got to be mindful of the counter attack. So I think for me that's playing smart when you make those small modifications. You don't change your philosophy, but you make those small little tactical adjustments, considering what you're up against. So it was a little bit of a tactical element to the game last night, which I enjoyed. It wasn't a top level in terms of technical, the football, misplaced pass, a little bit of sloppiness here and there. But I think that was the tension of the occasion maybe creeping into the game. But I did enjoy it, and like I said, evenly poised. I give Liverpool a slight advantage, but I'm always fascinated. I always reserve judgment in terms of when I see those two team sheets come in an hour before kick-off, and that's always the time you look and you think, you make your decision in terms of, well, that's interesting what he's doing here. Because of that, I really fancy Liverpool now, or not too sure. Probably I'll give Bayern Munich the edge. But you're right, I think some people maybe underestimated that Bayern Munich team. Not as good as previous Bayern Munich teams, but still not the type of team to go to even to a cauldron like Anfield and be overawed by the occasion. I thought they weren't. I thought they started well. The mentality was good, work rate, good defensive discipline to the team, and I was reasonably impressed with Bayern.
Let's talk about your area of the pitch. Fabinho, is he showing up centre back to be the easiest place in the pitch to play?
Yeah. No, I think you're right. Are you taking the mick there, saying it's the easiest place in the... no, but I think...
I wouldn't dare say it's easy.
No, but I think to a certain extent, you're right. Because really, logically, when you think about playing the centre-half, which I did for most of my career, you got the whole game taking place ahead of you. You don't have to worry about, to a large extent, what's going on behind you. And generally, when you do, the keeper's coming out to bail you out. So the whole pitch is in front of you. That's when I talk about Hummels. When Bayern Munich got penned to the edge of the box for a period last night, he was kind of very, very comfortable with the ball being played in front, stepping out, making interceptions, winning headers, crosses, coming into the box. Different to a certain extent, the higher you get up the pitch to the halfway line, those big distances open up, and behind you can be a little bit more exposed. But you're right, centre half a little bit more time on the ball. I played centre midfield a couple of times during my career. Early in my career, I was put in centre midfield, didn't enjoy it. Really uncomfortable in there, wasn't at ease at all. Totally different position, having to play a little bit on the kind of half turn. It was okay in defensive situations because your natural instincts kick in, but in terms of getting on the ball and having to receive the ball and players there behind you, constantly having to have your head in the swivel, I couldn't do it. I really couldn't do it on. So to play as a central midfielder at centre half and have the whole play in front of you and have that little bit more time in possession, I think it is. It is a lot easier. Now, you're tested it maybe a little bit more defensively because you haven't got, as a centre midfielder, you have the luxury maybe centre halves behind you who can bail you out. You're the last line defence there. Got to be very careful you don't make too many mistakes. I thought he did okay, Fabinho.
The statistics are actually, like, he had a 100...
What's that you're going to start throwing at me now?
No, just Fabinho's performance last night.
Yeah.
I think it was pretty clear from anybody watching on TV that he was outstanding, but like a 100% success rate with his tackles and clearances, 1 interception, 5 ball recoveries, and committed just 1 foul. I was obviously taking a look and I said it's the easiest position in the park to play because this was an individually excellent performance.
Yeah. I don't absorb too much those stats that you throw at me, but yeah, in terms of performance, I thought he was solid. I thought the problem was Matip in the first half, really nervous start to the game. Even that Gnabry cross I spoke, but he couldn't sort his feet and nearly put it into his own goal. And then quickly after that, there was the Alisson mistake. He made a bit of mistake, but even still, he knocked it arrived at the feet of Matip on the edge of the box. And instead of thinking, right, keeper's made a mistake, just put my foot through the ball here, tried to flick with the outside of his foot on the edge of his box, with Bayern putting a squeeze on, gave away possession almost. So when those type of things happen, that really spreads nervousness around the team. And he was really struggling that first half. It kind of composed himself a little bit second half, but it just underlined what we already knew. that little bit of a soft centre. But the talk was about Fabinho leading into the game, and on the night, really, Matip for me looked very much ill at ease, particularly in that first half.
Is there just a case here that perhaps when Virgil van Dijk is on the pitch, he just spreads a calmness? It's not just what he does on the ball and how good he is as a player. Like Matip playing beside him is a bit calmer. He's not going to be as erratic as he was last night.
No, I think you're right. And I think when Van Dijk is on the pitch, it's no surprise Lovren, when he had a run of games alongside Van Dijk last year, looked a better player. And likewise Matip. I think you're right. I think there is a psychological aspect talking about that area as well, in terms of just seeing Van Dijk's presence, knowing how good he is. But just his individual attributes, I think he makes it easier for players as well, because he's a good defender. He gets around, gives good cover to people, bails them out. Passing generally is very accurate, good communication, gives good information to people, to his central defensive partner. That helps them out as well in terms of giving them good positional sense, good information. So all of those things, you're absolutely right. His presence on the pitch and his individual attributes certainly helps his partner alongside him, and indirectly fullbacks and central midfielders directly in front of him. So yeah, without a doubt, just saying really what we already know, his presence, his qualities were missed last night, and will be a big advantage if, as we expect, he comes back into the team for the second leg. Yeah,
talking about that second leg, are Liverpool going to progress?
Well, you're going to make me repeat yourself now.
Well, it all depends on the team sheet.
Yeah, I give them a slight advantage. Liverpool, by virtue of the fact that I think they can play better. And a big factor that Van Dijk's going to come into the team, and that's really going to improve the team. I looked at that Bayern Munich team, and I don't think there's too many adjustments you can make. I talked about maybe Goretzka coming in centre midfield, a little bit more of a creative element to the team, but I don't think you can change the team. You talk about Ribery coming in at the expense of maybe Coleman or Gnabry, but for me that really doesn't elevate them into a different level. For me, that was potentially the strongest team they could have put out last night. I like the back four. I think they've seen a lot of goals this season, but I think the partnership with Sula at centre half alongside Hummels is the best one. So I thought they played very well last night, Bayern Munich, but I think Liverpool have got a lot more to come, and Van Dijk is going to be a big part of that. So for me, it's slight advantage for Liverpool going into the game in 2 weeks. But even that intervening period on the game Sunday, another injury to another key person, Salah, limping out of the game at the weekend. Again, fine margins before the game. You lose one or two of those key players, the scales tipping Bayern's favour. So not much in it, but for me, again, like I say, Liverpool played to their best, Bayern played to their best, Liverpool goes through. But the fact is, Liverpool didn't find their best performance last night. A repeat of that performance again over in Bayern, even with the likes of Van Dijk in the team, not quite at it, just a little bit off in certain areas, individuals not quite at it. Again, but this Bayern Munich team is good enough to take advantage. Yeah, we can see there as well. It was 0-0 in Lyon against Barcelona in their first leg as well last night. And then tonight it's Atletico Madrid against Juventus, and we've got Schalke against Manchester City. The other big football story from last night, though, is the news that Maurizio Sarri has survived. It was looking like a period earlier in the evening that he could be gone by the time we got around to this morning, but he's hung on by his fingertips. It's been another tough week for him, obviously. Monday night, the Chelsea fans joining in with the Manchester United fans saying you're going to get sacked in the morning. The idea now that Maurizio Sarri could come in and stamp his own philosophy on a Chelsea team and have time to do that is obviously ridiculous at this point. So I have a bit of sympathy for Maurizio Sarri on that end, because Chelsea knew what they were getting, and clearly the philosophy he just hasn't had time to stamp it down on a group of players, and that's why he only used 14 players, he said 15 players, because... No, I disagree with it, to be honest, because I think the philosophy is pretty obvious, and I think he managed to get those messages across very quickly in terms of how he wanted his team to play in and out possession. Because you say that he hasn't had time. You look at their first 10, 15 games of the season, they were unbeaten for the first 10, 11 games, playing some wonderful football, really playing as a real cohesive unit. So it's not as if he's been struggling all season. So for me, the argument, he's struggling to implement his no, it was there early in the season, but the inherent flaws, not in the system, but in terms of the individual players within that system, was pretty evident. Even when they were winning now, and I've probably been on record saying this before I started the season, I'm playing well and on that good run. I was looking at the team thinking, bloody hell, Jorginho, he really can't run. He can't tackle. And I'd look at Luiz. I've never been a huge fan of David Luiz's defending. Alonso, the more I looked at him, I thought he's making too many mistakes. And I thought, you know what? If there's a bit of a drop-off with this team, or they come up against a team who has a little bit more possession and pens them in and really asks questions of them defensively, I'm not convinced of this team. That axis of Jorginho, David Luiz and Alonso, I was looking at thinking, that's porous. That's not strong enough. So obviously it's come to fruition. There's been a drop-off in terms of performance, but the drop-off has come out because of the deficiencies those three players in particular from a defensive point of view. So you're talking now about philosophy. A lot of the talk is screaming Kante into that holding midfield position. So for me, something's got to change because performances aren't good enough. They're getting exposed time and time again, those players in particular. So you've got to change something. David Luiz is suddenly going to become the best defender in the world in the next fortnight. Alonso isn't going to stop making those mistakes. Jorginho isn't going to discover another 5 yards of pace in the next couple of months of the season. He's not going to develop that kind of Kante defensive mindset either. It's not going to happen. So what are he going to change it? So for me, I know people have been screaming for it, but Kante going back into the holding midfield position. Christensen, say for example, coming in at centre half, for me, is a better defender than David Luiz. You don't change your philosophy just by making two adjustments in terms of personnel. The shape stays the same, 4-3 with the holding midfield player. You could argue Kante is technically efficient as Jorginho, maybe not. But for me, he's still comfortable receiving the ball and playing 10, 15 yard passes. I don't think necessarily your philosophy has to change just by making those couple of individual changes within the team. And that's where I look at Saturday and think you need to be a little bit more flexible here because this is only going one way. And it's all well and good. No, if I go down, I'm going to go down and do it my way. But I don't think he has to necessarily change his philosophy to get a reaction and maybe to get a bit of a spike in terms of performance. He's got to recognise those key areas where he's deficient at the moment and make some changes. Jorginho has to come out of that team. He's got to get Kante back in there, and he's got to make an adjustment in the defence. That combination of David Luiz and Alonso, it's weak. It's as simple as that. Defensively, not good enough. So if he doesn't make those adjustments, it's only going to go one way. It's literally only a matter of time. And I'm surprised he hasn't made those adjustments. For me, we're talking about earlier being smart. Like Solskjaer say a little bit in terms of tactically how he changes teams. The Manchester United team, which I really liked, he did it again against Chelsea. He was speaking about Kovac not sending his fullbacks so high up the pitch. Those little small modifications, small little adjustments that you need to make without sacrificing the total change of philosophy where the players think, he doesn't believe in this at all. We're flip-flopping here between systems. But those small little adjustments players look at and think, yeah, that's smart. That is really smart. That's what we needed. That made a difference. And that's what Sarri needs to do, because I think at the moment the players are losing confidence in him and the system a little bit because of that, because he's just repeating the same things week in, week out, same results, below par performance, defeat. And I think the players look as if they're losing a bit of confidence as well.
Yeah, and there's every chance, I think. It's easy to say that Manchester City could do another number on them in the Carabao Cup final this Sunday. City, of course, in action tonight. Do they have, to a certain extent, some of the same problems that Liverpool have in terms of squad depth? That, like, while their bench is excellent, beyond that, if they get injuries, suddenly the players coming off the bench aren't great. He does like to operate with a small-ish squad, Guardiola. It doesn't mean that they don't have depth.
That's a stretch.
I know it's a stretch, but
in terms of I don't know what you're saying. I actually agree with it, to be honest with you, in terms of Mourinho, you spoke about this before as well, in terms of he'd rather have it a little bit smaller.
Like Pep is always complaining about the calendar, and he's like, he made some sarcastic comments in the build-up to the game tonight, saying that, I wonder will FIFA or UEFA, whoever, come up with another competition to sort of ruin our pre-season, because he's talking about only 3 weeks off for his players. Like, he cares a lot about a thin enough group of players, and I'm not saying for 1 second that Manchester City, if they get 1 or 2 injuries, are screwed. But then again, you look at the Fernandinho issue around Christmas as well, when he was missing, performances tended to nosedive. Like, I do wonder if there is more similarities between the depth of Manchester City squad and Liverpool squad than we realise.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I don't think so. I still think it's a strong Manchester City squad. I pinch of salt what Guardiola's talking. He kind of tried to incorporate pre-season tournaments and all that type of thing. I think it's fair argument in terms of what he's saying, but I don't like to hear it from a manager. Don't like to hear it from me. It's kind of too negative. It's planted little seeds in your players' minds in terms of a little drop-off performance. It's almost acceptable because, as we all know, there's too many games. I think there's too many games. I never like to hear that from a manager. I think generally he's handled it quite well in terms of squad rotation. Guardiola from week to week, you never quite be too sure in terms of Aguero, Jesus, the wide men, Mahrez coming in, Sané, he kind of flips there a little bit, kind of the rotation, central midfield, and even at the back in terms of Stone in and out, Laporte, Otamendi, the fullbacks. I know he's had injuries, and I think it's a good thing, to be fair. I think what that small squad, what it ensures, if everybody's getting game time, you are going to accumulate a couple of injuries here and there, but generally speaking, that kind of squad which you keep together, that kind of 18, 20, whatever it is, 21-man squad, everybody's getting game time. There isn't 2 or 3 players who are always on the outside looking in, not getting the amount of game time that they need. A little bit of discontent can kind of creep into the squad. A couple of big personalities not happy, making known their feelings. A little bit of whispering going on in the dress, and all that type of thing can happen with kind of too big a squad. The smaller squad, a little bit more tight, everybody getting enough game time, feeling part of it, which they will do at Manchester City, been in all the cup competitions, helps as well. A lot of big games coming up at this stage of the season, everybody getting a piece of it, minutes on the pitch. I think that's all good. I think there's a flip argument in terms of you're making 2 games fatigue, all that type of thing, but also in terms of everybody getting a piece of it, big games coming in, that big adrenaline rush, momentum, big games coming, that's exactly what players want to be a part of. I think generally Guardiola's handled it quite well in terms of rotating his players, but I don't like to hear that. I must admit, I heard that interview, I was cringing a little bit.
Really?
Yeah, I'd love to hear him stay away from it. Just say, look.
He says that sort of stuff quite a lot, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, I just don't like to hear it. Just I'd rather he stay as a player. I'm just thinking myself as a player not in the dressing room, but listening to that as players always do. Managers being interviewed, I'd much rather hear. Yeah, well, it is what it is. A lot of games coming, but bring them on. I trust me players. I have confidence in me players. They're enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. This is where we want to be. Business end of the season. All the cup competitions. Yeah. Can't get enough of it. Yeah. That type of thing for me would kind of invigorate me a little bit more as a player, rather than the kind of, well, a lot of games, can't ask for more from me players. Don't be surprised if there is a physical drop off. What's being demanded of more players. Don't like to hear that.
No, for sure. And there is kind of the element as well, when something goes wrong, the first thing you want is another game to sort of rectify it, as we saw with Manchester United on Monday night. I guess last week there was a lot of people who were kind of rushing to say that Solskjaer's been found out, and maybe he's still been found out, and Chelsea were just a bit of a walkover given everything we've seen from them recently. But ultimately you're still looking at this game on Sunday, and I know this is going to be the last time we'll be speaking to you before Sunday, as an absolute potential cracker, and like really anybody who's writing off Manchester United for this one hasn't really watched too much of them recently.
Did you watch the game? Did you watch the Chelsea game Monday? I was so impressed with Manchester United. I was interested because of the reasons that you said off the back of it, not getting beat to PSG, but the manner of it. Second half in particular, it kind of fell apart. It became very disjointed, almost like lost a lot of that confidence, that bit of a stroke which they'd had previously. Previous games, it wasn't there, kind of evaporated very quickly in that second half against PSG. So again, looking at the Chelsea game, I thought this is very interesting. The manager, in terms of the tactical setup, again, that little small adjustments which we spoke about, we kind of diamond in midfield, Mata at the very top, an orthodox front two, Mata getting around the feet of Jorginho, as we've seen a couple of teams do previously, nullify his threat. Not only that, get on the ball and actually influence the game from that position, because Jorginho just can't get around the pitch and make tackles on it. In the first goal, Mata pretty much set up the move. Jorginho is not able to get round his feet and influence absolutely anything. But United, good shape, good defensive shape. Back four looks solid. Owen, haven't said that too many times over the past couple of years. I like the partnership of Small and Lindelof. For me, it's my preferred choice, has been for some time. I thought if to get them two on the pitch, that looks like a partnership to me. Solid in the full-back positions, the spine of the team, attitude, the intensity was good, started well, physically got around the pitch, Owen, made contact with Chelsea, made tackles and carried a real threat, not just counter-attack, but in possession as well. So the attitude, the reaction to that PSG for me was absolutely spot on, what I would have hoped for. And you can see the reaction of the United supporters, huge Manchester United support there. But even still, it was obvious watching the game, the noise they were generating. I know they were winning the game, but the noise for the majority of that game that they created, you can sense even amongst the supporters, we enjoy what we're seeing here. Not now, don't buy into this Manchester United way, because like I said, at times it's almost a little bit of a counter-attacking style under Solskjaer. But you needn't make any apologies for that. You play to the strengths of your players, and I like what I'm saying. And that was for me, that was a really not more of a solid performance, real kind of top quality performance in some respects. Really disciplined, kind of battle hard, and just mentally, physically almost overpowered. Chelsea were kind of after a decent start to the game, that kind of lack of confidence, that bit of brittleness crept into their game second half, and United really breezed through in the second half. So with the weekend game coming up against Liverpool, can't wait. Yeah, and it's going to be live on Off the Ball and News Talk as well if you're out and about. We're going to get Darren Cleary in for this morning's sports news in just a moment.